we're going to do here this evening is, first of all, thank our sponsors. There are 4 of them. The Swatara Watershed Association is your primary sponsor. League of Women Voters, people are here helping us in that regard, doing the timing. We want to try to keep this in a format that moves along, so they're going to be doing that for us.
I've handled specific situations in a lease agreement. I've handled the overall context of what it means to get involved with these oil and gas leases. The law is changing constantly because this is relatively new. You look at the statutes and you look at the regulations and you believe you know what it is, and then a court case grinds its way through the court for 2 or 3 years, and then you finally find out what the judge says it means. And then ultimately what the judge says it means, that's what it means, even if you believe something differently. So what I want to do this evening in my moments, and by the way, I would defer some of the things I'm talking about to these people from Bradford County, because they're there where it's happening, and they're there on a daily basis, and they understand very clearly what goes on, particularly after the lease has been negotiated and the bonus money's been paid and away they go. We don't have any experience with that down here, but they have tons of experience on how that works. And I'll tell you, this is a typical oil and gas lease. And if you look at that oil and gas lease, it's prepared. This isn't prepared by you, the owner. It's prepared by the gas company. And it's complex. It's a little convoluted. It uses words that have terms of art that you have no idea what they mean. Some of the sentences don't make sense, but believe me, they're heavily weighted towards the gas companies. And if they present this to you and you sign it, then that's pretty much it. And you don't want to sign one of these standard oil and gas leases. Probably the 6th or 7th guy that I represented, landowner, owns land upstate, called me one night and said, "I've got to see you tomorrow morning. It's very important." I said, "Fine." He comes in and he shows me one of these things. And he says, "Is this for real?" And I said, "Yeah, no, yes, for real." "Yes, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, it says here somewhere that I'm going to get $52,500. Now, is that true? Or is this one of these Nigerian schemes or the Canadian lottery or something like that?" I said, "No, you sign this and they're going to give you $52,500 in a month or 2 after they do some preliminary checking with the title." And he says, "Fine." And he gets up to leave, and I said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Are you sure I'm going to get that money?" I said, "If things check out on their preliminary title work, you'll get the money. And if you don't get the money, you have a right to sue them for the money." He said, "Okay, that's all I need to know." And as you'll find out, particularly from the other people on the panel, you don't want to sign those lease agreements without changes. As I'm moving down my client list over the past year or so, there are so many draconian things in the original lease agreements that they were showing these people, and that some people started to object to. They now have a standard addendum, a 1 or 2 page addendum on standard language that they already have in their back pocket. But if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. And but if you ask for it, all of a sudden it gets attached to the lease agreement. And they're hoping you don't ask for it because the addendum takes away some of their rights and gives a little bit more rights to you. But that initial number that you see on the first addendum can be pretty darn amazing. I have a guy that's out in Cornwall Manor right now. He never made anything in his lifetime. And all of a sudden he got a check for $474,000. But he wanted to know more about what the lease agreement is, what the royalty rights were, what's going to happen, once they get on the land, what's really going on. He was interested in that, even though he's in Cornwall Manor, but he was interested from the point of view of his kids and his grandkids. But what I want to deal with are some of the considerations that you have to think about when you go through the lease agreement but even before, when you decide whether this is the right thing to do, whether this works for you, the upfront money can be astounding and astonishing, and that puts a jolt into you, and it's almost like found money. And a lot of people react weirdly when they get found money. But you got to know, I think, what your goals are with the property that you own. I mean, is this God's country? Is this the pristine place you want, without noise, without odors, without smells or anything like it? If that's it, unless the bonus money is astounding, you probably should not do this. Are you thinking about it in terms of your kids, your grandkids, estate planning? And do you want them to have a nice place to go to, hunting and fishing and walking and hiking without all the stuff that goes along with gas drilling? Then maybe you don't want to do this unless the money is overwhelming. Is it compatible with the use of the property now? Take into account noise, equipment running back and forth on your property, conjunction with putting these wells in, and ensure in that regard, is the aggravation worth the money you're going to get? And then when you decide maybe that makes sense to you, then you gotta figure out whether you can do this or not. You've got to know something about the title to your property. What do you own? Basically, if there's no reservations in the title of the property, you own the property, the surface of the property, things that are on it, the improvements, and then down to the center of the earth. And then in a conical thing, way up into the sky. And those are your rights, air rights, and you own all those things. But sometimes you don't have those rights. Sometimes either you, or more probably someone in the past, gave up the rights. You may still have the rights to use the surface, to live in your house, to mow your lawn, to put in a swimming pool and that, but deep down under that, those rights, the mineral rights, may have been given away. I was talking to a lawyer in Wilkes-Barre that has a lot of experience in these things last month, and he said that there became a problem as to whether someone had the right to give away the gas rights. And they went back to the 1860s when all this mineral and gas drilling and stuff started in Pennsylvania, and went back to there and started from the very beginning there. And about 30 years later, someone had sold those rights. And so then the current person, present owner, didn't have the right to do that. So you've got to know what your deeds say. Quite frankly, as Joel was saying, there's not many properties that have deeds that are subject to mineral rights, or whereby the mineral rights were sold. The main areas that I can think of, and they don't affect the Swatara watershed, are the areas in Cornwall, in Mount Gretna, and Colebrook. Every one of those properties do not own the mineral rights underneath them. They're owned by the Coleman family or the Bethlehem Steel Company, who had the ore mines out there and used the other areas for charcoal and stuff to fuel the ore. So many of you, if you live out in that area, you might be surprised to know that you don't own the mineral rights. But I don't think that's the case in the Swatara watershed, except as you get up into the Schuylkill County area, and just about every deed that comes out of Schuylkill County says you own this, and in big black print it says there's a reservation of rights to somebody else, and so you don't own those rights. So you got to know what rights you have, and also within the language of what rights you have, there are special terms of art. When in legal terms of art, in Pennsylvania, minerals don't mean oil and gas. So to maybe geologists or other experts, those are minerals. But as far as oil and gas rights are concerned, you have to say oil and gas. If you just use the word minerals, you might think the term minerals in the broadest sense, but it does not include oil and gas in Pennsylvania law. The other thing you might have to worry about, if you have a farm and it's in ag preservation, or it's subject to clean and green, there may be some prohibitions against doing that. But and there may be penalties for doing that. But maybe the big money you're going to get on the bonus end is going to overcome that. You don't mind having the rollbacks or getting by those restrictions. It may be more economical to take it out of agricultural. The other thing is you've got to look at, if you have a mortgage on the property, when you gave a mortgage when you bought the property or maybe refinanced, you've basically given the bank, the mortgage company, your property as security for the loan. Well, again, your property is not only the surface rights, but what's underneath it. There may be a clause in there that it says if you sell any part of your property, including mineral rights or whatever, you can't do that without our permission. So you may have to go to the bank and say, look, I'm selling the mineral rights, I'm going to get X amount of dollars, and I'm asking you for written permission to do that. They may grant it freely. They may say, that's fine, that really doesn't affect our appraisal and our security in the property. Or they may say to you, well, that's fine, you're getting $500,000, we want $100,000 of that. And then we'll reduce your mortgage accordingly. So you got to look at the language in the mortgage document so you know what you're talking about. The other cautionary thing is, in my view, you need a tax professional to know what's going on. The fellow that I talked about for 52.5, he was going to buy his Escalade and something else. And I told him not to do that because when you get the money, the next year you're going to have to pay a lot of taxes on it. And you better have a reserve set aside for the taxes, and you can't spend all that money just like that. So whether he did that or not, I don't know. But in this lease agreement, it covers a lot of things, but yet it may say something in this lease agreement in three or four sentences, and that doesn't give you an idea of what's going to happen, such as what's going to happen after you get your money and after they start moving in and developing these wells. You don't know what the traffic's going to be. It doesn't spell it out here. It almost gives them the right to do whatever the heck they want to do. You don't know if there's going to be setbacks from where the gas well is supposed to be located to your well or to your house. You don't know how many times a day they're going to be on the property. You don't know what they're going to bring on the property. You don't know where they're going to bring the stuff on the property. And the 3 or 4 paragraphs almost gives them the right thing to do whatever they want to do. So these form leases, they want you to believe they're set in stone and there's no other way around it. And that's not true. You can start out with a form agreement, but then you have to have an extensive addendums to it to cover some of these things that happen later. You know, like they always say that the devil's in the details. Well, the lease doesn't provide much of the detail. The details are almost going to be what the gas companies want to do with your property. But some things to think about. Some things when you get one of these lease agreements. Some things, and I'm going to go through a list. I don't have much time, but things to think about. Again, the first pile of money you're going to get is called the bonus money. That's usually geared toward so many dollars per acre of land that you have. And at different times during this run-up, those numbers change. They can change depending on what part of the state you're in, what part of the geology you're in. And you've got to know what's going on in this particular area at a particular part of time. The first couple of gas leases I looked at had a certain amount of money, and then during the period of time that they had not to pay it, the gas prices went down, so they didn't pay it, and so things were flat for a while. And then all of a sudden the gas prices went up, and boy, the prices went up. Prices, the best one I think I had was $6,200 per acre, and that might have been low. I've seen from $1,500 to $6,200. A couple at that level and a couple at $5,800. But there are a couple at $2,000. It depends on where you are and the timing of it. So it helps you to get up there in the community. If you live down here, to see what's going on, what the market values are.
Can you wrap up?
Huh?
Can you wrap up? You've got the...
What? I want to hear music. I won't stop till I hear the music. Oh man, there's so many things.
Closing statement, Tom.
Okay, closing statement is, if anyone gets excited and they're going to attack the speakers, as Tom suggested that may happen. I just had open heart surgery two months ago. And my cardiologist said I'm not allowed to take a punch in the chest. So if you come up here to hit me in the mouth. Not the chest.
Tom, it's your turn.
I don't know if I can follow that. Our next speaker is already on the board here, Mike Lovegreen. If you saw a little bit of Mike's resume from Bradford County, Mike has been since 1980 the County Conservation District Director. And my experience with Mike goes back to about 1999-2000 on the 7th Task Force with the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. But my experience with him is that if there's anything in Bradford County that has a potential impact on the soil, farming, or water quality, Mike's there in some capacity. That's his job. He sits on the county advisory committee with regard to Marcellus because there's a lot of activity in the county. And so I'll turn it over to Mike Lovegreen from Bradford County.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, you guys ready? I've got a 2-hour presentation that I'm going to give in 15 minutes. Go ahead, hit the next one. Well, I always like to start a talk on perspective, and I sincerely believe that you as landowners, decision makers, and officials really need to understand or evaluate the perspective of where you're getting your information, because I think as Tom mentioned, or somebody else mentioned, this is a highly charged, it's an emotional issue. Everybody seems to spin information. Right up to our legislators, depending on their political bent and how they perceive business and environment and regulation, to our regulators. That
Okay, closing statement is, if anyone gets excited and they're going to attack the speakers, as Tom suggested that may happen. I just had open heart surgery two months ago. And my cardiologist said I'm not allowed to take a punch in the chest. So if you come up here to hit me in the mouth. Not the chest. Stuff, Chris Troop from Lebanon County Planning is in the process of preparing a model ordinance to deal with this, and he's going to distribute that to the municipalities shortly. Just a few bullet points. I'm back to the agreement again, because I believe the agreement is a lot, not everything, but is a lot. And a couple of things that, in addition to what we've all talked about up here, be careful on the renewal term. As a minimum, you want to be paid again on the renewal term. It's usually, the first term is usually 5 years. Renewal, get paid again, and possibly there's an opportunity to put some other conditions in that occurred during the first 5 years. You might be able to get extra money on the pad site. You might be able to get extra money on the length of the gas line. You want them to comply with all federal, state, and local laws. You want to put language in the agreement to prohibit the mechanics lien situation. You don't want anyone to put a lien on the property without your permission, and there's ways to do that in the agreement. On the royalties, royalties right now are up to 20%. Statutorily, it's 12.5 minimum, but you can get up to 20%. But that's the beginning point. Unless it's modified, they have the right to deduct from that all the development and marketing costs. There's a Supreme Court case that says that. So in the addendum, you've got to say that doesn't count. That is, you're dealing with the gross and not with all these accounting things that get it down to the net royalties. What?